Welcome, Ed. Really good to have you here.
Mike, it's such a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for so long.
Excellent. When I start a podcast, I generally give a bit of an overview about the years that we've known each other and in the industry for 30 plus years. So it tends to be, oh, we've known each other for 30 years. But me and you, we've known each other for a year. And I'll give you a little insight into to how. So I spoke to Norma at Kaleidoscope. And I said to her, we had this really cool marketing idea with Exclusively Connect, and it was sort of introducing custom installers to other luxury brands and helping them to collaborate together. And I said, do you know anybody in the States, as Graham from Exclusive Connect would really like to take this idea across the pond? And she said, she stopped me. She said, Ed Gilmore. He said, he's the guy. You've got to go and speak to Ed. And I reached out to you, and from that moment, I've got to say, me and you connected, and even though we've known each other for only a short while, I must confess I've really enjoyed your company in the times that I've been with you.
Yeah, and likewise. And Norma, Norma is just such a wonderful resource, right? We all love Norma.
Yeah,
We know. I mean, the first time I met her, there was a kindred spirit in the room, and we talked for hours and hours. And it just she just brings out the best in everyone. I'm not sure what that is.
yeah, she
Such
does
a
have that
talent,
magic
right?
for sure.
She just extracts, the best essence of, of your character out. You just want to be around that all the time. It's just
Definitely,
magical, really.
100%.
But yes, it was so funny because I was following her trip here, to UK,
Yeah,
and I did. That's the first time I saw your podcast, actually,
yeah.
and I thought, oh, this is a really great podcast.
Oh,
This
thank
guy Mike Beatty, he's got it
you.
going on. False cinemas, this is something else, right?
No,
And so then when she got back, I asked her about it. She goes, "Oh, you're gonna meet Mike. You're gonna meet Mike." And I had no idea what was happening. And then when we got on the Zoom call together, it was
yeah.
so nice meeting you.
Well, I'll let you into a secret because she has obviously a new company now,
Yes,
and predominantly she podcasts, right,
yes.
in the film industry. But when I got her on, it was the first one she had done, and she was very nervous. And afterwards, we played it back, and I said, "That was amazing, Norma. It was great. Do you think so? Do you think so?" And like literally a year and a half later,
Yeah.
she set up a company doing podcasting.
Every week. Every week. And
Yeah.
she's an expert interviewer.
Yeah.
She's
I'll
fantastic.
make sure we put a link in the comments when I put this out on LinkedIn.
It's the
And
least we can do,
we
right?
absolutely, that's
Super
good.
exciting. Yeah.
So on the subject of companies, when you were talking about the different types of members for CEDIA, I know you've been around, as we said, for 34 years. I guess you've seen a lot of changes over those years, right? Is there anything that you can share with us that will help our dealers and our audience that are listening into the podcast of where we've come from, where we've come to, the changes that you've seen, and how you think as a business you've adapted and need to continue to adapt
Mm.
to continue being a great company?
Yeah, I think the word adapt is the most important thing. And certainly, I can point back to my career. When I started, I was really recommending two-channel systems.
Mm,
Video wasn't even a thing,
yeah,
really. I mean, audio video was plugging a VCR, the output, the left-right output of it into an AV receiver.
yeah,
That was the extent of audio video. So imagine the excitement we had when you had Dolby, surround come out. And then you had actually huge CRT projections, making their way into residential. And this is in the late 80s.
like
So
small cars, weren't
uh,
they?
coffins, as we call them, dangerous coffins. So I was able to actually experience all of that.
Mm,
And I took that path, and the one thing that was, I could say that is always true is that we kept on adding more and more services.
mm,
We kept on doing more. Well, you had no choice, actually. You had to follow the flow with what it is. But what I see with a lot of companies is that they get stuck,
mm,
and being stuck in terms of doing something that you've always done before, and this is what we do and how we do it. And process is great, and everybody needs a process, but it has to always be changing. It has to always be adapting
yeah,
into new technologies. So we followed that same thing. We did audio, audio video, control. Oh, control. That was the holy grail. And we gave up everything for control.
right.
I really, we sold our souls to control. I mean, I think that was really the downfall of our industry. was the idea that the experience that we were trying to offer our clients came down to a button press.
Yeah.
Well, how easy is it to disappoint a client with a button press?
Yeah.
If the one time it doesn't work
Yeah.
in front of all their friends or whatever it is, the value's gone. You know,
Yeah.
you've offered them nothing. But we put hours and hours and hours into programming and coming with custom programming because everything was custom at that time. There was nothing templated. And so I went through that whole
Mm.
the early smart home, as they called it, which was anything but smart. And then networking started to happen. And then, oh, lighting control. Well, this is an interesting thing,
Yeah.
right? Oh, shades. Yes, we can do shades too. Why don't we do lighting control? Why don't we do shades? And then all of a sudden it became fixtures,
Yeah.
right? So now all of a sudden we're dealing with everything in the house, right? We're still dealing with control, except the control's been a little more sophisticated, more reliable, which is great. Now we have lighting control, we have shade control, we have our audio video. It's usually now it's distributed audio video. It's not just, singular. Oh, but then there's private cinema as well. So there's that experience. And now we're looking at fixtures. So now we're selling fixtures and recommending fixtures. Well, why wouldn't we? I mean, we've got to control them. We might as well deal with that. But if you think about that, you're adapting and you're changing the whole dynamic of the process. That's well beyond what we're doing.
Sure.
So we're changing how business has been done. Construction processes have been done for years, for generations,
Yeah.
and we're disrupting that. And with disruption comes, a lot of angst, and you have to be pretty tactful as a politician, to navigate this. And you have to understand the concept of what a win-win is for the electrician, for the general contractor,
Sure.
for your client. And if you don't do that, you're going to have some real issues.
Yeah. It's an
So
interesting one.
you have to be aware, and you have to, your head has to be on a swivel and know what's happening, around you all the time. And
I,
I
re-
think a lot of guys just don't get that.
I remember talking to Kevin Andrews over at Idea Works a little while on another podcast that I was doing, and he interestingly said that he believed that the secret to his success was based in not believing that the money was going to be made on your first client. The first experience that client had with you. It was all about exceeding expectations and ensuring that that client came back to you. And when he did come back to you with an issue or wanted an upgrade, you were there for him.
Yeah. Service is the key. And I think that even from the very beginning, I realized that I was a service, and that's what I provide. I'm a service company.
Mm,
Sold lovely things to people and made their lives infinitely more beautiful
mm,
in certain cases. But at the end of the day, what we were really doing is providing a service.
yeah.
So, I know that's been codified more recently, and we even at CEDIA or some of the buying groups, the U.S. has buying groups. I'm not so sure if in the UK you actually I think they come to you as
Yeah,
a distributor,
exactly.
right?
It's more about distribution in the
Yeah.
UK, less so in the States, right?
Exactly. So we have, we have buying groups in the US. And one of the key components that have been driving, I think, the industry has been service.
Mm,
Everybody wants RMR. Everybody wants that type of income that's coming in. But in truth, what it really is talking about is providing a level of service
mm,
that can support our clients so that our industry, doesn't have a bad name.
yeah,
The worst thing that's happened, I think, in our industry are the people that just leave their clients stranded. It gives it's such a horrible taste, and people that implement poor systems and then don't provide service. Well, that client is next time they do a renovation or they move or whatever happens, they're gonna say, "No, I don't want this. This is a
absolutely
horrible
right.
experience. Why would I ever do this again?"
Yeah,
So I think that if you go into the industry understanding what your real purpose is, and it can be very rewarding and can be very satisfying monetarily if you do it right. It's a wonderful career, and that's why I try to tell anybody that comes to work for me, this is a career.
yeah.
If you're thinking of it as a job, you're in the wrong place.
But you said earlier that when you started out,
Mm.
you're a musician, right?
Yeah,
And for you, you're really passionate about music,
yeah.
and you're really passionate about high level of performance with your systems. Um, it's felt like over the years, perhaps because some of the folk that are coming into the industry are engineers and they're perhaps, IT people, perhaps they're not coming from a place of real enthusiasm. And that's something that you said you really kind of saw as a little bit of an issue. That we all need to get passionate about the sound and the performance of our systems again.
It it's about providing our clients with the best experience. And that experience really is, for me, watching my clients respond to
Mm.
a system, whether it's music, whether it's cinema, where they have a visceral reaction to it, you know. And is that reaction going to be the same today as it's going to be in a month,
Yeah.
6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road? Well, we want that. We want to exceed those expectations
Yeah.
all the time, even while we're exceeding service expectations as well. And I do feel that there are a lot of people that got into this industry because they saw, wow, it's a $3 billion
Mm.
industry. Let's jump in, and there may be, business majors, coming out of school. A lot of people from finance deciding they're going to move into this industry. And there is that lack of real passion.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a business to them, right?
Yeah.
And that's great because God knows we needed it. I didn't come from any business background at all.
Yeah.
And if you think about, the guys that pioneered our industry, none of us had any business school
Yeah.
skills at
Yeah.
all. I
Yeah.
mean, we were just making it up as we went, and we got lucky,
Yeah.
for the most part. But nobody understood any business jargon at all. So that injection has been good, I think. Has been overall has been
Yeah.
good. But I do miss the fact that, and it's not just been where they're coming from. It's been what their experience growing up as the young people coming up. I mean, we had this thing in the early aughts, the I, the whole I thing happened,
Mm.
right? Well, the experience for a cinema and the experience for music has never been about I. It's been about we.
Mm.
It's people coming together. I'm sure you remember. I mean, when I was a kid, we bought an album and I saved for that album.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew I couldn't have it the day it was released, but boy, if I did this job or this job and I saved enough money, I can go down to the record store and buy the album. And then I listened to it. And so when I have my friends over and we're listening to that, it was serious stuff.
Yeah.
Shut up, listen, listen. We're gonna have this great listening experience, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And that was the way I grew up. And people are so distracted right now, and people don't even understand what an album is anymore. Oh, it's this track. Okay, it's this track. We're gonna download this track. No, well, so
And generally on the phone as well, right?
yeah, always on the phone,
Yeah.
right? Earbuds, great experience. So there's a lot of stuff that I think has hurt the industry.
Mm.
But again, that same technology then becomes the basis. I mean, if we didn't have an iPhone, well, most homes are being controlled by an iPhone right now,
Yeah, sure.
right? So
Sure.
you're leveraging this technology in very different ways. I just feel that the emotion, and I think that the excitement, needs to transcend that platform.
Yeah, no, I
That's
would
all.
absolutely agree with you. When I was talking to people about the fact you were coming on to the podcast
Mhm.
to have a conversation, I think a lot of people are intrigued not only with the positive stories and the great stuff that you've got to share, but also the challenges that you've gone through over those 34 years. And I think it's important that we talk about a few of those for the audience to be able to kind of be able to resonate with what it is that you're saying. So, have you got any examples of challenges that you faced and how you've come through those?
Well, first of all, going into business is not for the faint of heart. And if you think that you have to be selfless
Mm.
when you're opening. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in the early days I didn't pay myself. I mean, I had to make sure my staff was paid. That was the important thing.
Mm.
There were times when we didn't have the technology that came around that kind of bailed us out. I can give you a couple of really interesting points in time that we were bailed out by technology.
Mm.
Um, for example, when plasma TVs came out for the very
Yeah.
first time, that was an amazing time when you could sell a 42-inch plasma television for $20,000, and the margins were 50% on them. I mean, and we were selling 10 in a home at a time. I mean, wow, that's margin, right? So those margins have eroded and things, so you have to think about how are you going to make that revenue up?
Yes.
How do we deal with it? In 2007 and 8, when we had a huge crash in the US,
Mm.
actually, it was a worldwide crash. We were very concerned at that time. The control systems weren't working very well. There was no streaming really, but there were music servers at that time,
Yeah.
early music servers, Audio Request. There was a company called Arrakis. It's different. It was a commercial product. And we were trying to use those and integrate with those and trying to get some type of an experience that was usable. It was horrific. But there was this cascading failure that was starting to happen with these systems. And then there was this thing that came out, a different product that was a templated. And I saw the ability to have an experience that was repeatable and predictable through the whole home, which was huge for us.
Mm.
We weren't having to draw this up all the time and, and create it with code. And it also enabled me to flip those clients into that platform.
Yeah.
And what was so exciting about it for me was I instantly realized that if I didn't have to spend all that time programming and all that money programming, I could put it back into what mattered: better speakers, better
Yeah.
electronics, a real experience. And that's when I came up with the idea of give me one room. Give me, I'll do whatever you want me to do in the rest of the house, but give me one room where it's special.
Yeah.
Give me one room where the experience I really want to offer you, I can. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I think that really resonated with a lot of our clients. But that was a very dark time. I mean, a lot of companies went out of business there.
Yeah.
It was just that we recognized a trend that helped us get through it in a really interesting way. The other thing that I think that's happening right now is the new opportunities. There don't seem to, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. In the US, we have an election. Election years are notoriously bad years
Yeah.
for people. Um, Inflation, we've just gone over a huge hike in inflation. Things seem to be settling a little bit now, but people, the smallest things with people who have high net worth stop them from moving forward on big
Yeah.
projects.
They're tending to put the finger on the pause button rather than kind of not doing it anymore,
And
right?
and that pause button can be for years.
Yeah.
It could be for 2 or 3 years. For us, that's an eternity.
Mm.
For them,
Yeah.
it's not such a big deal. But then you have to think about, well, what can I do in the interim if my cash flow is being disrupted because I'm not getting these big projects? What do you do? And it seems so simple, but what we did about a year ago was start to go back to all of our clients and say, look, you know, you need to meet our minimum service requirements, and that means we need to upgrade this and this. And once you get them in the house, once you get into the house and you start talking and getting back in touch with them and in front of them, it's almost organic that they say, well,
Yeah.
what else can you do for me?
Yeah.
What about this over here? What should we do here? And then, well, I'm really unhappy with the light in this room. What can we do here? And even if it's a retrofit solution, if it's not a complete tear, all of a sudden you're looking at, you know, oh, that market that doesn't exist anymore, that $75,000 to $100,000, project, and it's there,
Yeah.
and you just mine that, and then eventually some of the bigger projects come in, and then you got that balance again. So it's really paying attention to where you are for your cash flow and what's happening. And I have a spidey sense about it. I mean, I just feel it in my gut that, oh, something's happening. I need to, pay attention. And I've been very fortunate to be able to shake the tree a little bit and have things happen. But that's part of longevity.
Yeah.
That's part of reputation. That's part of all those things that you build. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And,
So
and that's why it's so important, right? To exceed expectations for every client, because if you don't, you won't be getting back into their house
they
again.
won't let you back in.
Yeah.
They won't.
And they won't recommend you either, right?
Yeah, no, never. And we are, look, for better or worse, you talked about marketing, right? And exclusively connect, and there are other marketing opportunities for integrators. But I think that, ultimately we've always been word of mouth, and word of mouth is always your best
Yeah.
ally. Because if you can get that client to give you a reference to their friend, to their partner, their business partner, that's really what keeps the business going.
Yeah.
And those are your best qualified leads.
Definitely.
They already know what you're able to provide,
Yeah.
and they want it.
And it's actually quite unusual, isn't it, for high net worths to recommend somebody. So you do have to exceed expectations
Yeah.
to have them telling their friend that they should use Ed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, so we talk about providing experiences for our clients, but what is the experience like for them dealing with you
Mm.
as an integrator? That's equally as important. Are you responsive? Do you get back to them? And that doesn't mean you have to jump, just because they call you. Oh, I got a text. I got to get into this immediately. What it means is be thoughtful. Be mindful of what that response really is. Don't waste their time. Often email trails get really, really tricky, and I normally feel like after one or two email, it's better just to get on the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Let's sort it out on the phone and figure this out, and just nip that in the bud. Too many people rely on their phones and texting and all these other forms of communication, and so many things get lost,
Yeah.
within that. So I think that it's always been a personal experience that you want to have. You want to develop that you want to develop that trust with your client. Once you have that, I mean, I say this, and this is really a kind of a weird concept, but I have more keys to more houses. Who gives you the key to your house?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a minute, how bizarre that concept is. Nobody's in the home. Just let yourself in and do the work you need to do. I mean, that's such a privilege,
Yeah.
to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So Um, I think that you're very right about this whole idea. In terms of what we do, is not just service based, trust based, and you become part of the family,
Definitely. That's
an
hundred
extended
percent.
part of their family. And God knows we're in very personal, you know, situations.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I was when I was organising today, I considered bringing in some dealers for a session after the podcast, and that's what I've done. We have half a dozen guys waiting in the kitchen to talk to you, and I think that the subject about sort of exceeding expectations and your client experiences is something that's going to come up. I think over the next couple of hours when we meet those
Okay.
guys outside. So one other subject that I'm intrigued about, when I came over to CDA Denver,
Mm.
we met up,
Mhm.
and there was a lot of talk about AI, and not so much new technologies, but I wondered from your perspective, what's your feeling on AI? What's your feeling about what's happening in the industry? Where are we moving into?
Well, AI is fascinating because I don't think we've ever had the a point in time in our history where all the knowledge that's been accumulated through history is available, and then the experience that you have with AI is the worst experience you're going to have on that given day because it's going to be exceptionally better the next time you come back to it.
Yeah,
I think that's really frightening, actually, to a certain degree. The other thing is that I think can help us a lot and has helped us a lot. You know, proposal, scope of work. Oh yeah, you got to double check it. There are hallucinations for sure that are involved, and you better check it.
yeah,
But it's a time saving thing. And then there's the other part of it that gets a little frightening in the sense of, you know, it can write code. It can do these things. So what does that mean in terms of your company and your personnel? And well, I know what it means. It means that there are going to be people who will not have jobs moving forward. You know what I mean? Because AI eventually will mature to a point where it will be de facto that this is how we're going to be programming. This is how we are going to be doing
mm,
processes through AI. Service. I mean, service is huge with AI.
yeah,
I mean, there are companies right now, really progressive companies that are using AI, cutting out third party,
yeah.
support systems, and just doing everything with AI. So I think it's going to be probably the biggest tool that we've ever had at our disposal
Mm,
moving forward.
I would agree.
And like any tool, it can cut both ways, and we have to be extremely careful how we use it.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, sure.
So, talk to me about your music career.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people would like to hear about how you started out. You started 34 years ago, but you started in music, right? So, give us a little bit of history.
Yeah, so I was a classical musician. I was a clarinetist. I had a really wonderful solo chamber music and to a certain degree orchestral career. Orchestra was never anything I really wanted to do. I was more of a free spirit. I wanted to get out there and perform on a smaller level, more intimate level. So chamber music seemed to be the way I should go with it. I went to schools. I went to Indiana University. It's a really interesting parallel about Indiana University because it's something that I was on. Ron Callis has a podcast in the U.S., One Firefly, and it actually happened on his podcast that I actually connected these dots, which is a little bizarre. But in 1976, I'm going to say, I was a music student at Indiana University, and I remember being at the School of Music and a guy coming up to me and saying, "Hey, do you want to go and listen to this really cool musical experience?" I
Mm,
said, "Yeah, sure. Where is it?" He goes, "Oh, it's going to be at some barn, maybe 15 miles out of Bloomington. You would like to come with us?" So there were six of us that got in a car. I'm going to say that drugs were involved at that time. Remember, it's 1976. And so we go to this barn and we go there, and there are all these pillows in the middle of this barn. And then there's, remember the Bose 901 speakers,
Yeah,
right? And there were eight of these 901s in a circle around us. And they put on Dark Side of the Moon. And it was in quadraphonic sound. It was Jim Fosgate.
right.
I had no idea who Jim Fosgate was at that time. You know what I mean? But we were listening to his, you know, prototype of surround sound,
Yeah,
I mean, in this barn. And I'd never heard anything like it. It was extraordinary. And from that moment on, I became a hobbyist. That's how it really started,
yeah,
the AV portion of it. But musically, I performed, as I said, with a lot of different chamber groups. I worked with, I left IU after I did a tour with Leonard Bernstein.
right.
And so we did a tour. It was his 40th anniversary of a concert he gave in Jerusalem during the Six Day War, or right after the Six Day War. So they were honoring him. So he wanted to take a musical review with him. I had been working at a place in the summer. That's where we met him, and he was going to use his alma mater, Curtis Institute. We convinced him to use Indiana University because they had a better theater drama program and musical drama
Yeah.
program, and he did. And so we went on this tour with him. And then I was in Europe for about 8 months, and when I got back to Bloomington, it was very evident I had to go to New York. It was time for me to come back to New York,
Yeah.
so I did. I finished up there, but it was there that I started doing a lot of recording, and then this is where the audio thing comes in again, right? We were recording these esoteric academic albums, but they were only being reviewed in the back pages of like the Absolute Sound because they were audiophile recordings. What
Yeah.
did we know? Absolute Sound, Stereophile, magazines like that. I got married really young, and I was like 21, 22, to a girl, and it was a very um, unhappy relationship. She was a 9 to 5er. I was a musician. I was touring all the time. And she was very unhappy with that relationship and our arrangement. And she was working at the infancy of software for financial software. And one day she calls me up and she says, I got this client. It's a general contractor. No idea what a general contractor is. And I said, he's got a quote. Client's got a quote. It's for $85,000. And he has another quote for $65,000, but he doesn't want to really spend any more than 50. Do you know one of your engineering friends that might be able to recommend some equipment to him? And I remember thinking, yeah, I think I'll do this. Because while I was at Juilliard, when I had breaks, I'd go to all the stereo shops because while I was reading these reviews, I was also reading reviews of the equipment. And so I would say, yeah, let me listen to that Conrad Johnson preamp with that Mark Levinson amplifier and those, whatever speakers. And I was getting these demos. I pretended I had lots of money, which I didn't have. Was yanking the salespeople all around. But anyway, I had this kind of knowledge. And so I said, sure, I'll do it. I got the job. It wasn't so much that I got the job, it was who I got the job for. And it was for a leading architectural interior design firm in New York,
Right.
Johnson Wanzenberg. Jed Johnson had just left Andy Warhol. So his Rolodex was like overflowing,
Yeah.
with celebrities and people like that. But remember, this is 1988. And it's the infancy of our industry,
Yeah.
really. So I got in the ground level, with this. The ground level on the top floor in the penthouse, basically. I mean, because I'm working for people. My first client was Richard Gere, who
Wow.
was with Cindy Crawford.
Wow.
So it just went from there, And so I would bid out the projects. I would design them and bid them out, and then I'd find some retail operation. There were no custom installers, right? There were engineers, guys, recording engineers that would do this, right? Or there were retail stores. And after waiting around and watching them, it became obvious to me at that level, this was not brain surgery. I could do it myself. And I started offering those services myself to my clients. But the biggest thing that I did back in the day, and this gets back to service, is that, people would say to me, I'm not really a big audiophile. You know, I want a good system, but I'm not an audiophile. But I want to see that Bloomberg crawl at the bottom of my television. I need a good television for that,
Yeah.
right? And so I started talking to them about the music, and they'd cave in and say, okay, I'll do those reference speakers, and I'll do that AdCom system or whatever you're recommending, at the time. And I would take them down to Tower Records because they existed then.
Mm.
I would get a shopping cart. Here are your 50 essential classical albums. Here's your 50, essential jazz albums. Here are, your rock and roll albums you must have.
Mm.
These are desert island albums that you must have. And we would start collecting the libraries for them. And that's what they can't keep on coming back to me for.
Love that.
I really, really love, this. I love Stravinsky. Well, okay, that was rare, but I love Stravinsky. What else do you have? I mean, sure, we'll keep on going in 20th century. Let's see what happens,
Yeah.
with that. And we kept on doing that. And that went on even through my days, the early days of Kaleidoscape, when they had a music server,
Yeah.
Kaleidoscape.
Yeah.
And we were ripping the CDs into their Kaleidoscape systems. We offered that service, for our clients. It's only since streaming that really that's kind of died down, but I'm still an advocate, for
Oh,
obviously,
absolutely.
for what I think are bespoke servers like Rune for. Oh, I'm using a product. I'm sorry. Cut that out, ladies. I never talk about product. I'm sorry, but I do care about high res streaming, and I do care about the best type of representation we can get.
That's
So,
brilliant,
so that's
brilliant.
carried through for the
Yeah,
years.
I think that we lose sight of the fact that when a client comes to a dealer, what he's actually saying is, "I love movies, I love music, and I want it to be a great experience." And we're all so into kit, right? But the kit is just kind of what it is that we need to get the experience. And I think we all need to get back to that a little bit, as you said right at the beginning. We need to get passionate again about the sound
Yeah,
and how you were when you started out. I remember my days in audiophile all those years ago, selling hi-fi systems, and they were some of the happiest times as a salesperson because I was able to have a client come in who said that I don't listen to a lot of music, so I don't want to spend a lot of money. And then an hour later, he'd be walking out spending 30, 40,000 quid on an audio system. I mean, they were great days, and people really appreciated sound. And yeah, my plea to the industry is let's get back to that. Let's get back to that because otherwise, when it's all about solutions, we lose the magic that we set out to start our businesses with.
I think one of the biggest challenges we have in the industry today are the three words that I consider the worst three words I ever hear. Listen, when a client says it's good enough,
Yeah,
oh, that's just soul wrenching. When somebody says, "Put this in because it's good enough,"
yeah.
is is your $10 million home good enough? Are the cars that you're driving outside good enough? Why all of a sudden are your values lowered so exponentially?
Yeah.
Right? Is because you've been burned by technology? Is because you've had bad experiences? What what all of a sudden made that good enough, but everything else is
And
exceptional?
I think that's why these kind of experience centers
Hmm.
that we have and your demonstration space in New York are so important because
Right.
clients don't know, right? The perception of home cinema can be a soundbar underneath a TV.
Sure.
So until we show them something better, of course it's good enough.
Right. And a Yugo was fine. It got you from point A to point B, but is that what you want to be in
Yeah.
to get to along the journey? I don't think so. You know what I mean? And I think it's important not necessarily to shame them into this, but just to remind them, that it should align with the level of quality that they experience in all the other aspects of their life. Right? Why does this get lumped into something that's not essential, not important, when actually we know that those experiences can lead to so much joy,
Yeah.
in your life, and not only that, but people talk about private cinema, and oh, I don't need a private cinema. There's a lot of technology and a lot of science that go into the right private cinema. And that private cinema isn't just that anymore. It's really a wellness room,
Yeah.
if you think about it,
Absolutely right.
right? It's a place to shut off all the noise in your life. It's a place you can use it. We see it being used as yoga rooms. We see it, meditation rooms,
Yeah.
reading rooms, actually. You know what I mean? It's not just, a place where you go in, turn all the lights off and be in a man cave and, watch something with a lot of explosions and, and it's really not what
Yeah.
this is
Well,
about.
that's a really important point and perhaps a good place to finish.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that we got together and really enjoyed the podcast.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing you some more this evening at the CDA
I can't wait
Awards.
to be at these awards. I can't wait.
I'm
Dress up
looking
in a
forward to
tux.
seeing the suit. It's
Well, don't get let's set those expectations too high.
yeah, exactly.
But it is what I used to wear when I performed, so it's a little dated. Put it that way. But it looks good.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll be coming out here having some lunch, meeting with some dealers. So I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully the podcast will come out in the coming days. But
Fabulous.
thank you, Ed. It was an absolute pleasure spending time with you this morning and talking through some of your experiences.
Well, it's a real honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me on, and it's delightful to be here. Really, thank you,
Thanks, Ed.
Mike.